The story of Medal of Honor places you in modern day Iraq as a Tier 1 operator, and you're fighting your way through doing command after command. And basically, that's all I caught from the story. Um, a lot of stuff goes on. It really, it has a bunch of. It tries to make them sound like big moments, like when you're lasering targets or stuff, and it zooms out and does a big explosion. But it doesn't really have that same kind of impact that I felt in like other games, such as Call of Duty. It's just like the big moments that they want to have in this game don't really seem that well achieved, and the story is pretty bland, and you just go from place to place, not really a direct objective, and you stab, shoot your way to the end of the game. So sound in Medal of Honor is probably one of the greatest highlights that I found. The guns sound very realistic, and the voice dialogue is pretty nice. It's not that impactful, but really they got it best with the gun sounds. Like it really sounds like gunshots. They kind of echo, and when you're being fired at, you can kind of tell when it's incoming fire and differentiate that between outgoing fire. And just basically, just the entire atmosphere of warfare was pretty much covered very well with explosions and everything going off as you're going through the game. And I thought that part was probably one of the strongest things that Medal of Honor has.
Okay, so going into Medal of Honor, I was expecting top of the line graphics, like literally some of the best graphics we've seen on the consoles nowadays. And as soon as I got to the first mission, I kind of was just like wondering if this was for real. Like the first mission, you're playing in the night and everything's just pixelated. Your movement's stiff. Your environments at times are really good, I'm not gonna lie, but for the majority of the time are just kind of bland and everything just kind of mushes together. And I was honestly just out of everything in this game, I was most disappointed by the graphics. So overall for me, the graphics were a huge disappointment. I mean, they weren't bad or anything, they just were definitely not what I was expecting. So that's how I felt about the graphics, and I know Media Junkie wanted to say something, so go for it.
Okay, so just another kind of point towards the graphics not being that well. There's a ATV chase that you take part in throughout the game, or actually it's one whole level, and I actually found that to be pretty nauseating, honestly. Like the graphics engine just kind of blurred it all together, and just not everything looks as good as it should be. I mean, the trailers and everything for this made it out to look entirely different. And then once you load the game up, it's like, well, where's the game if they were advertising all that time, you know? So yeah, that's all I have to say for the graphics.
Yeah, I also thought the graphics weren't that great. There's a lot of frame rate issues for something that doesn't have that great of graphics, and it's kind of sad too because, I mean, DICE made this game. They didn't make the single player; they made the multiplayer, and even the multiplayer looks the same. It still looks like blah. And they made Bad Company 2, which is a great looking game, and I don't know what happened. Maybe they just had less time with this game or something, or they didn't give a shit or something. I don't know. Maybe both. I don't know. So yeah, graphics aren't very good. So let's go on to whatever the next category is. I don't give a shit. Okay, now the gameplay in Medal of Honor, I'll just say right here, I thought it was very generic. Now the single player is probably the weakest part of the whole game itself. It's really boring. Story, like we said before, is almost non-existent, and it's pretty much the same thing over and over again. You shoot, you shoot, you shoot, you get on a turret maybe sometimes, and you shoot, you use a laser pointer, you shoot, you shoot, you shoot, and that's really it. Oh, and you drive an ATV like Media Junkie said. Really, it's just boring as hell, and I couldn't get through it before I did my first review. I finally beat it after a freaking week, but it's short too, which is sad, but it's really boring the single player. So does anybody else want to talk about the multiplayer maybe?
Well, I didn't play the multiplayer, but I'll add something for the single player. I know that I'm gonna probably get a lot of hate for this, but I noticed some striking similarities between this and Call of Duty Modern Warfare, and I know that I shouldn't be comparing them, but I felt like I had to. I mean, there's this one level towards the end of the game where you get into a helicopter crash and you're like kind of stumbling around with a knife. That's like right out of Modern Warfare 2, the last level, when you're stumbling around with the knife after the boat crash. Like, I immediately thought of that. And, I mean, you know, it's not a huge deal, but it's just I was just kind of like, okay, really, guys. But I mean, there were a lot of cool aspects of the campaign for me personally, at least. Like, there's one level where you're surrounded by just a bunch of Taliban, like surrounding you in the mountains, and you're taking cover in one little house, just fighting off hordes and hordes. I thought that was really cool, but there really just wasn't a whole lot that kept me interested. So that's how I felt about it.
I've actually been pretty engrossed into the multiplayer. I've been playing it through. It kind of has a lot of similarities to Bad Company. I think that's because the same developers created it. But I really enjoyed the multiplayer aspect of it. However, the controls are fine, but just the gameplay wasn't that enjoyable.
Okay, so overall, I think you finally figured out by the review that at least I personally, was really, really disappointed with this game. It was nothing at all like I was expecting. This was one of the games that I was waiting for a while, that I was pumped about, that I was excited to get, and I'm just utterly disappointed with this game. I really hope we don't see a sequel, even though by the ending, no spoilers. I won't tell you any spoilers, but I feel like they kind of set it up for one. But based off what I've seen in this game, I hope for none. Overall score, I'd give it a 6.5 out of 10, and yeah, just wasn't the greatest for me. What about you, Gore?
Yeah, I didn't really care for it all that much. The multiplayer was good for what it was. I mean, it's not addictive like Halo is or even Call of Duty is, but it's still okay, mostly because it's made by the guys from Bad Company too. But the single player is very generic, it's very boring, and the story is just not there. Like, literally, it's not there. So, overall, I give it a 7 out of 10. How about you, junkie?
Um, I actually felt that the multiplayer was the strongest point in the game. However, it had a single player. Um, if you kind of bring it down to its own level and don't compare it with a lot of other things, it might stand up a little bit more instead of comparing it to your stronger franchises that have been around for a lot longer. But I think the story has its weak points, a lot of them, but it's bearable and it just kind of helps with the entire experience. You can tell that the single player and the multiplayer were created differently, two different companies. I mean, they even announced that. But I think definitely the multiplayer is the strongest aspect in this, and that's really what's going to keep me coming back to it. I'm going to play through the single player to get all the trophies and everything. However, that multiplayer is going to keep me coming back to it at least until other titles come out. You know, if I ever want to just throw this in and play it for a little while, I will. However, it's not going to be one of those games that is really memorable to you. So I give Medal of Honor a 7 out of 10.